Hello, welcome back to Sit and See. I'm Dr. Jared Jones. My research specialties are ancient systems of meditation, the cognitive science of meditation, the Buddhist philosophy, and the philosophy of science. I'm on a bit of a mission to help people with training and meditation in the midst of real life. So, if you're the type of person who lives in real life and not in fake life, and you'd like to learn about meditation, you're in the right place. If you're receiving this live stream from a cave in the Himalayas, probably turn this off right away. All right. Fantastic. So, welcome everyone who's here. I can't see how many of you that is, but no problem at all. While we're getting set up, I'm going to just put this in the chat as usual. Uh, Open meditation class, Q&A. Yes. Lovely. Okay. I'm going to pin that. Man, oh man. Exciting, exciting news. And no one to share it with. So I'm just going to share this link in the chat for people who might come along later, as quite a number of you do tend to come along later when I'm not live. So check this out. I've spent at least half the day with one of the students who's now here in the chat, sweet and sour. Um, so has very kindly, since she lives relatively speaking nearby to Guangzhou, where Grandmaster Chen Qiming, Neil Ripsky's teacher, would have lived for the first part of his life and then traveled back to for years to teach traditional Chinese medicine and martial arts. We have been doing everything we can to try to get information from Dr. Chen's family members and just sleuthing through information that's available through Buddhist temples and the Jingwu Federation, which unfortunately the branch of Jingwu Federation that Dr. Chen was trained in Jingwu has shut down, so we won't be able to get information directly from them. But we're making our way through it, and we've already found some really interesting material. So we found that Dr. Chen's website from when he was living in Canada is still on the Wayback Machine, and so we have his website. You can click the link there and you can actually see Dr. Chen Qiming's website from way back. So, man, what an exciting time! What an exciting time it is. Um, so, for those of you who don't know, I've been working with Neil Ripsky to try to keep this lineage, the 18 Lohan Palm lineage, alive. And I spent 4 hours with him last night having a long chat about what it is he wants to do in teaching that lineage. And he's had a 40-year career learning from martial arts from the Jingwu Federation and traveling around the world, training with some of the best internal martial artists of every style, from Tai Chi to Xing Yi to Bagua to Yichuan, and also learning some of the harder arts to a high level at which they start becoming internal. And so he has a huge amount of, let's just call it the technology of the internal Chinese martial arts. And he's done nothing else his whole life, except, as an adult. Uh, he's had no other job, let's say, other than training in martial arts and teaching it. So he's spent 40 years running martial arts studios, working as a bouncer, training military people, training police officers, training people in martial arts of all stripes all over the world. So, really astonishing that he has now agreed, basically, or not agreed, but he's now decided He's moving into the final chapter of his life. He's now 50 years old. He's got enough time to teach a few people a full lineage of something. And so he wants to take everything he's ever learned in terms of Chinese art, internal arts, funnel it through the Lohan system and train people in all of the internal stuff that he knows through training them in Lohan. Um, and I spent 3 hours talking to him, or 4 hours last night talking to him about how we want to design the curriculum and combine it with also his training in Thai forest meditation and my training in meditation more generally, so that people can go through and get, as relatively normal people, can get the absolute most out of the mind training aspects, the energy training aspects, and of course the physical training aspects. So really, really pleased with how that has turned out. Yeah, I mean the curriculum is just so deep. It's so deep. There's years worth of material to teach there, and I couldn't be more excited. Okay, so what lineage do I follow? Um, Yumi, I have been training in Tibetan Buddhism for about 20 years, and I've also been training in Dragon Gate Taoism for another 6 years. And Dragon Gate Complete Reality lineage includes a Taoist sort of lineage, you could say, a Buddhist lineage and a Confucian lineage. Um, I think it was about 150, 200 years ago, a great Taoist practitioner who had trained with a number of different lineages took the best of what he found everywhere and put it in under one roof. And subsequent practitioners of that school, which is now the largest school of Taoism, called Dragon Gate Complete Reality School, um, when they want to train in the Buddhist part of their practices, they go to Buddhists. And so it's not uncommon at all to find people in that lineage who, for example, in my particular lineage, 2 or 3 generations back, one of our lineage holders went to Tibet pre 1959 and trained in Tibetan Tantra in Tibet with the best in the world while they were still in a time capsule, having basically not interacted with the modern world very much at all, right? And and one generation back, the teacher there also trained in the Tibetan practices and trained in Chan Buddhism with a Chan monk. So it's quite a rich way of doing things. You take the very best of full-on Buddhist practice and the very best that you can get from sort of the Taoist practices that are there, and the very best that you can get from the Confucian practices that are there. Sort of like, think about it like this, right? Um, these days, if you train in meditation, you also want to learn a little bit of the cognitive science of meditation, right? Because someone else is looking at the same issue from over here that you're looking at from over here, and learning it from over here can really help. Or maybe you want to learn a little bit of Western philosophy or ethics or something from another tradition, so you can look at the issues related to ethics or character or logic or thought from over here when you mostly are looking at it from over here. So my position on that, um, since I guess we're kind of talking about my personal practice to get going, which is fine, is this: I'm a full-on, pretty hardcore Gelug Tibetan Buddhist practitioner. I've studied that lineage quite deeply. I've trained in it quite deeply. I continue to train in it quite deeply. Um, from what I can tell of the Taoist systems, in particular Neidan, which is, it's a little bit of an unfortunate name because it makes it sound quite sort of out there, and it's really not. Neidan means internal alchemy, but there's a very similar practice where basically you're learning how to sort of, how do I say, you sort of manipulate the body in a certain way so that so that your mind produces extremely subtle states of mind much more easily than if you were only training, for example, training in meditation, just sort of brute forcing it using your mind. So it's a really skillful technique. That technique, believe it or not, also exists in the Buddhist tantras. They have a virtually identical technique. And in the Tibetan systems, it's called tumo, inner fire. So again, you learn how to manipulate the body and use the body in a particular way to produce very, very subtle states of awareness. And then you can use those to do practice. So it's very skillful, you know, very, very skillful. And so I think also the Hindu tantras have this practice. The Jain tantras have this practice. I've heard that the Sikh practitioners have a practice like this as well. So this is a type of practice. It's a genre, you could say, that's all over the place. Now, what's quite interesting, what's quite interesting about this is that, at least in my opinion, if you sort of look at these practices from a number of different angles, you start to understand how this process that you're trying to do works better than if you were just looking at it from one angle. I think this is my opinion. And then there's a question of, okay, once you've generated extremely subtle states of mind using a technique like this, then what do you do with it? Because if you were an Advaita Vedanta practitioner, perhaps some schools simply abide in that state of extremely subtle non-dual awareness of the subtlest type of mind that exists, and they just abide in there, right? Without doing another type of practice, and they might say that's the end of the road. That's all you do. And the Buddhists are saying, well, there's a little bit more to do once you've done this. There's quite a bit more to do, actually. So, is that a contradiction? I don't know that it's a contradiction in the relevant sense, because the relevant sense would be that they lead to completely different places, wouldn't it? Whereas, in fact, as far as I can tell, these systems lead to the same place and then disagree about what you do next. And since you and I, if I could talk to you personally just for a moment, I don't know you very well. You know, you have 3 sentences on my stream, and I don't think I've ever met you. But let's assume that both you and I have never encountered the subtlest state of consciousness that exists. I'm happy to look at any system that's viable that produces that kind of effect, because if I can do that, then I can do the most subtle practices of Buddhism. You know, it doesn't really matter in an important sense how I got there. If I can generate those states of mind, I can use them to do the practices that Buddhism says you should do once you have them. So I don't see it as a contradiction. Yeah, safe to say. Safe to say. Most of us have not. I certainly have not. You know, but I work fairly hard at those practices in addition to the other things that I do with my practice. And you know, like there's an interesting video out there where the Dalai Lama was visiting some part of India, and he heard that the Jains have a practice like this in their tantras, and he wanted to put a conference together where he could have some of his people and himself there, and the Jains could explain their practices and how they do them. Because, you know, how valuable would it be if, in a basically, think about it like, imagine that you were a scientist, right? And you had a research program, but no internet, and you've been studying, I don't know, how to grow corn or something, okay? Or how to grow rice. And you've been doing this huge research program, but you can't get the information out to anybody else. But it turns out that over in like the other side of the country somewhere, somebody else is studying the same thing. And then in Japan, they're studying it also. And then, by the way, in China, they're studying it also. And then there's a big program in India, but none of these research programs are talking to each other. What a waste, right? Because if everyone's studying rice, wouldn't it be better if we could sort of hook the internet up and everyone got to see everyone else's research? I think that would be better. I mean, in academia, we call that peer review. You know, you put your research out there for the other experts to look at, and someone goes, "Oh, you know that one little thing over here that you're doing? We did that, and it doesn't work, and here's why it doesn't work. And if you adjust it like this, it really works." I mean, how valuable is that? If, for example, the Jains have this technique and the Hindus have this technique and the Taoists have this technique, And maybe the Sikhs also have a stream of this technique. And basically, none of us are talking to each other. So, yeah, it's a bit like an empirical project. If this is a thing that a human being can actually do, do certain things with the body so that you can cause subtle states of mind to become part of your experience. If that's a real thing human beings can do and a bunch of different traditions are doing it using techniques that are quite similar when you start investigating them, then we should be able to have conversations about it that are productive. So Saeed asks about why we couldn't call this God. Um, so there's a couple reasons I wouldn't be comfortable calling it God. Although I think, if someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think basically in some of the Hindu and Jain traditions they call it God. Like once you get to the subtlest state of awareness, that's God. Um, we don't do that, and I think the Taoists also don't do that because the Taoists and Buddhists have had really long conversations about this and kind of agree that that's not the best thing to do. Um, and the reason for this is, at least from a Buddhist perspective, that subtlest state of mind is significantly interdependent with other beings, but is not one with, like utterly one with other beings. It's interdependent with other beings. And it's not a universal creator. It's only a creator through its interrelationship with other beings and its interrelationship with reality. So your mind right now, even like if we just take a cognitive psychological perspective without getting too weird about it, don't scratch the surface too much. But according to cognitive science, when your eyeball gets stimulated, your brain does something. Let's just ignore that part for now. And then you produce a representation or an image, we could say, of visual things. What you end up seeing, the objects, the world you end up seeing, isn't the world, it's the image your mind produces of the world. Let's don't debate theology in the chat. Pay attention, pay attention. So already, when you look out at the night sky, visually, when you look at the night sky, your mind is generating an entire universe. Do you get it? When you look out at the night sky, your mind generates an entire universe. Think about how incredible this is. And we haven't even started talking about religion yet. Our minds are these unbelievable things. Absolutely unbelievable, even just from a scientific perspective. Unbelievable. And if you train in meditation, what you start to realize is right now, the objects in the world look like this. And it seems like vision's over here and I'm in between somewhere. I see things using my vision. And there's a world over here that's being seen by my visual capability. That's how it feels, isn't it? When you train in meditation on visual consciousness, it goes like this. And it becomes extremely obvious that the seeing thing and the seen can't be pulled apart, and there's no you in the middle. This is called non-duality. And so you can actually experience, for example, that your mind is generating literally an entire universe of visual experience, and that the mind can't be pulled apart from the fact that it's able to generate basically an entire universe of experience, right? So, from a Buddhist standpoint, your subtlest mind isn't just generating visual experiences of stuff. Your subtlest mind is actually generating through a process of karma and so on and so forth, is generating an actual universe, a physical universe. So your mind is already a universal creator kind of thing, right? So why don't we call it God? Because you're not the only one. The person sitting next to you is the same, but they're not you. Even in the subtlest state of awareness, they're not you, according to us. So there's not just basically in a sense, everyone is a creator god. I mean, that's a tough sort of pill to swallow. You have to spend a lot of time thinking this through. So either you can say everyone is their own god in a sense, which is really weird and doesn't actually get to the point and isn't what we mean by any of this, or you can just say there's no creator god. And let's talk about what consciousness is and what it does. Okay? Okay. All right, my friends, listen, listen, listen. So sit and see, sit and see is about meditation practice and asking questions directly related to your daily seated, standing, walking meditation practice. So I do, as you know, have the ability to go on for 4 or 5 hours at a time about philosophy and theoretical issues. But in this class, if I don't sort of keep it focused, then we never end up doing meditation. Right. So if you have questions about your meditation, please do ask. If not, then you can put other questions. If you have theoretical questions, about the relationship between the Sufi idea of Allah and clear light mind or something, I can give my opinion on it. Just put it in the comment section below the video instead of in the chat. And then later, when I'm going through all the comments and replying to them, because I reply to almost every comment, I can give you a written opinion on it. Yeah, you know, I don't want to leave you hanging, but for this class, this is mainly sort of Q&A for your meditation practice kind of class. Yes. So just on the last note, I will say the subtlest layer of your consciousness, according to Buddhism, it doesn't it how to say it doesn't have emotion in it. You know, it's not an emotional thing. So emotions happen several layers up, more towards, in my understanding, more towards the surface. Although there are subtler and subtler layers, because in Buddhist psychology, actually, emotions are a type of conceptual thought. This is really interesting and actually relevant to practice. So you know how sometimes I say to you guys when we're doing rumination, I say, think this thought until you feel it, right? Think it through until you go, oh, and it fills your whole system up, right? Because Buddhist psychology says emotions are just like really souped up, powerful conceptual thoughts. So as your conceptual thoughts get more complex and sort of take on layers and get attached to stuff, and not in the sense of attachment, but you sort of grab onto things with your concepts and link different ideas and different information, they become an experience where you feel movement in your body. You feel change in your system when you have that thought in that way quite powerfully in your system, right? So all of that is happening, relatively speaking, pretty far up, pretty high up in the it's pretty coarse in terms of your being. As you go to subtler layers, even just human level consciousness, which I teach in Foundation 4, how to access consciousness, just at the level of human consciousness, not even the weird ones yet, like the formless jhanas or nothing like this. That get even just accessing that, you see that consciousness itself doesn't have emotional content in it, because when mental content isn't appearing in front of it, there are no emotions in this part, right? This part's actually clear and pure, you could say. It's already sort of clean. It's already calm. Its nature in terms of its fundamental qualities doesn't have all of these disturbing things in it. However, it does have bliss in it, which is nice. And the better you get at abiding in here and abiding in this mind, and the better you get at reshaping all of the stuff that's on the surface so that it's more beneficial, like having humility, compassion, loving kindness, goodwill, perseverance, willpower, ethics, etc. on the surface, these things actually correlate with the way that this mind is, which is really interesting also. So the natural behavior that should come out of this mind is all of these good qualities by the time you get up to the level of conceptual thought. Isn't this fascinating? It's a little bit like, to go back to the God argument for a second. You know how they say God is the good, right? That by nature, for example, if you were going to fall into a hell-like existence, if you were following, who is it, Aquinas? No, not Aquinas. I can't remember, but someone said that basically hell is just the absence of God, and since God is the good, what you're left with is not good, right? So there's an interesting sort of corollary to this in the Buddhist meditation practice, you could say, because your mind is good and correlates with good. So when you spend more time in this mind, what happens on the surface when you're not abiding in this mind becomes better. And you can supercharge that, make it better, make it more powerful by reshaping everything on the surface to be more like it will be when you have better access to what the mind is. So you can work at it from both directions. Try to access what the mind is and try to reshape what's up here to be more in concordance with how this is under here. Because, for example, if you were abiding in this a state of the state of bliss that is the natural state of the sixth consciousness of mental consciousness, naturally your inclination would be to be ethical, to not harm other beings, to only eat as much food as you need, to only have as much resources as you actually need, et cetera, right? So it's again, and because you have the ability to generate non-dual awareness with vision and hearing and so forth, it's obvious to you that you're deeply, intimately interconnected with other beings. So the only rational response is loving kindness and compassion. That's the only thing that matches the situation as you can directly see it all the time. And so if you train in loving kindness and compassion, it's more like this mind. If you train in humility, remember how I said that in a state of non-dual awareness, the self you thought was there isn't there. Now, this doesn't mean you've accomplished selflessness, because that type of non-duality isn't yet selflessness, which is where a lot of people go wrong in the non-duality circles. If you spend time floating around Facebook or Reddit or whatever, that's being able to do this and and get that normal, ordinary sense of self that you think is you out of the way. That's the precursor to identifying the actual problem of self, which is happening in this state, according to my way, at least, of understanding these issues. What you get out of the way is sort of your ordinary sense of personality that you thought was you, but that's not the fundamental problem. That's not ignorance. It's related to ignorance. It comes from ignorance, but it's not the ignorance we're dealing with in Buddhist meditation. So if you, just to stay on track with this for a moment, if you train in humility, making your ordinary personality more appropriately sort of humble and receptive to the things from other people, that's more like this. That's more like the type of awareness that you're going to generate, even just with basic concentration training. Do you see it? Is this making sense? So if you wondered, why is it that good character improves your meditation practice? Because you're generating stuff on the surface of your mind that's more like the result that you attain through training and concentration. Venerable Atisha, one of the great saints who brought Buddhism into Tibet, or not brought it into Tibet, but revived it in Tibet after it declined a little bit, he said, concentration is the best form of ethics. If you can make your mind incredibly sharp in terms of concentration, you make much better decisions. You don't do as many unethical things. Okay. Jay. Good to see you, Jay. By the way, Jay, do you Do you want to be a moderator? I don't want to push it on you because when we do practice, even as a moderator, you should you should carry on doing the practices and just ignore the chat. But if since you're here so much, if you wanted to potentially, I'd like people to know that you're training pretty hard and so on and so forth so that they listen to you in the chat. Uh, okay. So you train you train your character. Notice the feedback loop that I'm creating with the techniques that I teach, right? You do foundation 1, you develop some concentration. You do foundation 2, you make that concentration deeper. You do foundation 2 and 3 still, and you're learning how to take it into more of your life so that the effects of your meditation are now stretching out into more activities. You do foundation 4 finally now, and you're accessing the fundamental things that make up your being. You're seeing, you're hearing, smelling, tasting, touch, and at least at first the contents of consciousness. Once you can access the contents of consciousness and not be totally wrapped up in it, then you have much more ability to control what appears on the surface of your mind because it doesn't feel like it's you anymore. It just feels like stuff that appears in your mind. So now you can reshape this stuff to be whatever you want. And since you can do that now, this is now Foundation 5. Why not use rumination? Why not use this powerful conceptual tool we have to create new emotions and reshape the emotional palette, the attitudes, the worldviews, the motivations that appear on the surface of your mind to be virtue, to be better, so that you have willpower, so that you have perseverance, so that you have stick-to-itiveness, so that you have drive to get things done to benefit your own future and the future of others. You see? Can you see it? And these qualities that make you conventionally successful also, as it so happens, make you successful in meditation training. I mean, the great texts on this say this exact thing. They say if you don't have perseverance, you can't even accomplish normal things, much less meditation. If you don't have patience, you can't accomplish normal things, much less meditation. But by implication, to flip it on its head, if you want to accomplish good things in the world in a normal sense, including having nice relationships and enough money to survive and a good job and good relationships with family and your neighbors, for goodness sake, I hope, my friends, that you talk to your neighbors and hang out with them from time to time. We need to get back to knowing our neighbors and having friends in the neighborhood. And if not that, belonging to local organizations of some kind where you talk to people in your area and hang out and do stuff with them in real life, things you enjoy, you know? Whether that's martial arts or it's board games or reading books together or whatever, just community is very important. And we're losing this. It's not gone, but we're losing this as in global modern culture because we've become so digital, and it's really essential. And some of you have asked me, well, how do I help people? You help people by not sitting in your room all the time. you know, you help people by doing things in the world, and people go, why is this martial arts guy so much different than the other martial arts guy? Why is this guy who comes to, I don't know what you guys do, maybe you play D&D or something, why is this guy that plays D&D with me once a week, why is he so different than the other guys who play this game? Why in the book club is this guy always so insightful with the things he pulls out of the books we're reading? Whatever. So if you want to help people, you need to go out and be involved in normal stuff. And it's through your career and your hobbies and your enjoyments and your connections with others in a conventional sense that naturally it will come up because people find other people interesting. And if you actually have good qualities of some kind, some people will go, how did you get like this? You know? Is this making sense? This is really how you do it, and you're not actually going out to try to like convert people to Buddhism or something. You just have as part of your makeup at some point that you really do care how it turns out for other people. You really care that things get better for others. All the way from I hope you have really good oranges. I hope that when you go to the store, you get the really nice ones, not the ones that are all screwed up that they put in there because they're trying to, sell the bad oranges with the good. I hope you get the really nice ones. All the way from the stupid sort of, I hope things turn out really well in a very ordinary sense for you, all the way up to if I have any capability in this to bring you further towards the omniscience of a Buddha, I'll do everything I can to help. And if I don't have any tools to help or very few, then at a minimum, I'll try to direct you to people that do have that information if you're interested. If you're not interested, let's talk about oranges and I'll see if I can help you get the best ones if that's something I know how to do. Or if you want to build a business and I know how to build businesses, let me help you let me help you build a really good business. If if you want to grow if you want to grow lettuce in your backyard and you know how to grow lettuce without having to kill slugs and you know what I mean? In a way that where you're not harming other beings, but whatever. And you know how to do that, and that's what they want to do. Hey, you know what? I'm really good at growing lettuce. I can show you how to do it organically where you don't have to kill any slugs. Wow. Okay, yeah, let's set up a time. So you can be conventionally beneficial to others, and it will come up from time to time with the right people who are interested and have the karma, and things will develop over time. I love that. I love that you say voles. I love you say vol. Voles and moles, they get such a bad. I have one of my long-term students actually. One of my long-term one of my long-term students is a was work has worked in the repair and sort of maintenance industry for a long time. And one of the things he said very early on is that he has to catch rats at his work. They want him to kill rats as part of his work. And so think about this, right? If you want to not accumulate all this negative karma related to killing, I said, okay, think it through. If you find the best traps possible that don't harm the animal, for example, and then you find a location that's far enough away from the city where that being won't find its way back to bother someone or eat someone's crops or something. And then if you set up a place like in a wild area that's perfect for rats so that owls won't and foxes won't come and kill them as soon as you leave, so that they have somewhere to hide and nest and all of this, right? Which is pretty easy to do. Then you can actually fulfill the wishes of your employer to remove all the rats. And at the same time, you can relocate the rat without killing it and put it in the best possible environment you can provide based upon the circumstances. See what I mean? So you can even benefit these rats that would have otherwise been killed. And if you're helping someone grow lettuce, you can help the slugs who would have been killed by someone who doesn't have enough skill in growing lettuce to know how to do it without killing slugs. You see what I mean? So and then that person would have accumulated for the sake of lettuce, for lettuce, would have accumulated unbelievable huge amounts of negative karma, killing tons of slugs. And so you stop them from doing this. And you don't need to tell anyone this, but you did, right? That's good, Jay. That's good. So bodhicitta comes a bit later in the process, but that's what metta is like. Real metta is you look at the situation of suffering of all being, of first of yourself, and you realize, subject to the three types of suffering, that there's nothing in samsara that you want at all. And you have this intense feeling. They call it the, what is it? The term actually means the desire to emerge, something like this. So you have this, first, this feeling, I want to be happy, and happiness means emerging from this situation in which there are the three types of suffering and the causes of suffering that keep me stuck here like this, right? Then you look at other beings and you go through a process of equalizing those beings until the attitude is, again, overwhelmingly powerful, that actually the only logical way to look at all beings is a completely equal attitude in a particular regard. Because enemies, somebody that kills, 50 people as a serial killer is not the same as a 2-year-old child or something, right? You need to treat these people differently depending on what they're doing. And a tiger is quite different than a puppy, right? Like, these are quite different beings that you need to treat differently. If you treat the tiger like a puppy, you're probably going to get killed. Okay? So the point is that in a particular regard, you see them all as completely equal, and that attitude is rock solid. I mean, absolutely rock solid. You have demolished the normal way that you think of other beings and feel about other beings in terms of placing them in certain kinds of emotional categories. And then having equalized them, all of them, down to the fleas, down to the hair mites, every single being, having equalized them, you then go, haven't they been so kind? And you look at their kindness. You look at their unbelievable, overwhelming kindness. And you do this with each category until you have this feeling that's overwhelming of sort of like gratitude. My goodness. Think about what it takes for a single strawberry to arrive at your house. A single strawberry to get to your house takes thousands thousands of generations of people selectively breeding a strawberry to make it more delicious, bigger, sweeter, the way that it appears now. Otherwise, it'd be like the wild ones that are like this big and taste of almost nothing. And then it takes hundreds and hundreds of hours of research, scientific effort into fertilizers, soil types, soil composition, farming, varietals of strawberries, seasonal changes, boom, bop, 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 right? Thousands upon thousands of hours. And then it takes thousands of hours researching how to transport this thing from the field to your house so that it has the very best possibility of staying fresh and beautiful and wonderful for you to eat. And then somebody has to actually pick it up out of the field using whatever method, put it in the right kind of thing, take it to the store. Same thing, the store, thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours of labor in terms of thought to develop the materials, develop the paint, develop the this, develop the shelving, develop this and that, just for it to exist sitting there on that shelf. And then you buy it using technology that came from, I don't know, 17 different countries around the world so that you can do a checkout by bouncing a signal off a satellite that, again, took that hundreds of thousands of hours of work to produce, and bouncing it back down to some checkout machine. And then you take it home. Think about the web of interdependence for you to just get one bite of food. It's overwhelming, the amount of kindness that other beings are showing you. So this will be our meditation for the day, by the way. We're doing another rumination day. It's absolutely overwhelming. How much kindness is being shown to you at this very moment? The fact that you're wearing a garment requires equal work, equal time, equal effort. The fact that you're wearing something covering your legs, the fact that you're sitting in a room inside a building, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of hours of time and effort so that you can have the type of comfort and enjoyment you're experiencing right at this moment. Think about the kindness, even if it's unintentional, the unbelievable kindness that has been granted to you, even if you're not in a great situation, even if your situation's not great, or you have a little bit of money trouble or a little bit of health trouble or whatever it is, my goodness. Still, most of us are living like minor royalty compared to the way we would have been living 3,000 years ago, you know? How quickly we can get from one place to another, how quickly we can communicate. Like if you've fallen on relatively hard times and you're listening to this, you're listening to it on a device that would seem like magic by any standard, as recently as 200 years ago. People would look at this device and think you were doing some kind of magic. It's impossible what these devices do, due to the unbelievable kindness, once again, of hundreds of thousands of hours of effort and thought and that other beings have afforded you. On top of this, we haven't even talked about animals, insects, the beings who pollinated these things, the worms who provided nutrients to the soil by moving through this and aerated the soil by moving through it, the beetles that provided aeration by moving through the soil and moved nutrients around, and hundreds and trillions of beings who contributed once again to this one little strawberry and the fact that we're talking about it right now, right? So then, when this feeling of, wow, I'm actually the recipient of a huge amount of kindness from all of these beings. Now look at those beings' situation. What kind of person would you be? How heartless, how short-sighted if you didn't repay that kindness. Can you stomach that? Can you stomach the idea of not repaying all of that kindness that's been given to you for basically for free? And if a feeling comes up that, "No, I can't. I have to do something. I have to do something to repay this kindness." Well, what do other beings want? Just like you want, just like you have the desire to be free, which for the sake of simplicity, let's think about it like this, that you want a stable state of internal peace and happiness that doesn't depend upon external circumstances, right? Wouldn't it be wonderful? How wonderful would it be if all sentient beings who have been so kind had that kind of happiness and all of the causes and conditions that are required for them to produce and live and sustain that kind of happiness. And even before that, wouldn't it how wonderful would it be if they just had all kinds of conventional benefit? Just the good, just the good stuff of life, right? Instead of having the shit stuff of life. They get the good strawberry instead of the one that isn't so good. They get the good oranges instead of the bad ones. They have a decent shirt to wear instead of one full of holes. They have enough water to drink. They have a roof over their head that isn't falling apart. How wonderful would it be if these beings who have been so kind to you for so long just got the basic stuff they needed to exist? My goodness, wouldn't that be incredible? You don't have to think about how it's going to happen and how you would do it. Just marinate in that feeling. How incredible would that be if they got that? And then think once again, well, I need to do something to repay this kindness. I'm going to do my very best. I'm going to take personal responsibility, do my very best, whatever I can, to bring about the temporary and ultimate happiness of other beings. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that yet, but at least I'm going to make myself fully available. At whatever level of benefit I can bring, I'm going to bring that for any being that happens to appear in front of me, whether it's a mosquito or it's a flea or it's a hair mite or it's a beetle or it's a wasp or it's a spider, it's a snake, it's a cow, it's a human being. For those of you who are perhaps a bit more religious, if it's a deity, if it's a hungry ghost, if it's a hell being, if it's a being transmigrating between lives. It doesn't matter what being appears in front of me, whatever level of benefit I can provide. Obviously, I'm going to avoid harming them as much as I can, but whatever level of benefit I can provide within my knowledge and capability, that's what I'm going to do, isn't it? And then if you can, if this feeling is filling you up, then just like with the other concentrations and so forth we trained in, take every single bit of attention you can, and just pull your mind into that feeling so that every bit of bandwidth you can is absorbed on the feeling that I'm going to do everything I can to provide the very best of temporary and ultimate happiness and the causes of temporary and ultimate happiness to others. So this is one aspect of training in loving kindness. It's actually the weakest technique. It's the secular technique. And because the benefit is indirect, and because the benefit, in some cases, not all cases, but in some aspects, in some regards, involves an exchange where you've provided something, they've provided something, as Sugar Free said, it's not as strong. But if you think about it, there's huge amounts of stuff you get to experience and have and be comfortable with that you don't chip in and on actually. You may have turned up to sort of pay for it later or use it later or whatever, but you didn't actually chip in on the fact that it came into being in the first place. Most of the buildings, most of the food, most of the sort of food chain that we now benefit from, etc. Mm. Yeah. So just a comment now, since we're wrapping up our rumination on Jay's experience. So this is how it should be. Loving kindness, if you generate even a small taste of it, especially if you haven't done it before, it is overwhelming in terms of its positivity. It's incredibly energizing. It will make perfect sense to you, having had that experience, why the Dalai Lama, for example, says compassion has a huge amount of energy to get things done. It's not at all like some floppy thing where you're like, "Oh, I hope all the puppies are happy," or something. It is this overwhelmingly powerful force in your psychology that has the potential to change every decision you make and to drive your behavior. Yeah, and it has a purifying effect. I mean, in some of the texts, I don't know that it applies to metta, but from experience, I think it does. If you have a little taste of metta or compassion or bodhicitta, it changes your psychology in a fundamental way. It's hard to go back to the moment when that experience hadn't occurred. I think it's hard to even sort of remember what your decision making process would have been like before you had even a few moments of that. Because once you've had it, you look back on that experience and you go, you know what? In my best moments, I know I really should be taking care of other beings. Even if I don't have that feeling right now, I know it's perfectly well justified. You know what I mean? I know this is absolutely the right direction to go. Even if that's not what's active in my mind now, I know this is what I should be doing. And of course, that's not there all the time, but it at least has the potential. That experience has the potential, even when it's not active, to affect huge amounts of your behavior. So, yeah. And it's purifying in the sense that a whole bunch of negative behaviors that would have occurred don't occur because of that experience having occurred in the past. And that's actually what purification means. It's not some mystical thing. It means that a bunch of negative stuff that would have happened doesn't happen. That you've removed the potential for that to happen. So, or you've damaged the potential for that to happen. So think about the four opponent powers as an example for purification. Since we're wrapping up, I'll say a bit on self-defense, but let me land this first plane before I take off in another. Um, so purification, if you think about the four opponent powers, for example, three of them are basically um, emotional emotional antidotes to different parts of your psychology related to past negative actions. So, for example, what's called regret, which is not guilt, is basically looking at a past negative action and going, you know what, that action wasn't good to do. Why wasn't it good? Because it hurt me and it hurt the other person, right? That creating that mental state that sees the past action that way naturally acts as an antidote or a buffer that stops you from doing that sort of thing again in the future, right? Psychologically, you're creating an opposing force. Likewise, what's called resolve is once you've seen that this action I did when I killed that bug, it really hurt the bug and it damaged my practice because whatever. Or when I yelled at my romantic partner, it really hurt their feelings and now it's also damaged my practice because I've disturbed my mind through this and created a situation that didn't need to occur. Whatever, right? So you look at that, you go, that wasn't the right thing to do. I and then resolve is the next mental state. You go, I'm going to do my very best to not do that again. And then the other two mental states that are put as one saying are refuge and bodhicitta. Why? Because refuge is basically your relationship with the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So most of your negative actions in the past have either been in regards to re- realized beings like monks and nuns and great meditators and bodhisattvas and Buddhas. Either your negative actions have been in regards to that. So refuge acts as an antidote to the fact that you formed negative motivations in regards to those in the past. And then bodhicitta, well, let's just not talk about it as bodhicitta for now. Let's talk about it as metta and compassion, since that's what we've been talking about. Metta is in regards to all sentient beings and desiring that they be happy. So, why does that stop you from engaging in similar actions in the future that are negative? Well, because if you hurt other beings in the past, it was because you didn't have metta in your mind. You see it? So through regret, resolve, refuge, and bodhicitta, but we can sort of zoom down, down here. Here's your to get the bodhicitta, you need the metta. So this is acting as an antidote to you doing that same kind of harmful thing in the future. This is why it purifies your mind. It's not magic. It's psychology. How do you build up those mental states? Rumination meditation, foundation 5. How do you build on those insights more intentionally? Rumination meditation. You learn how to use concentration to think through and use observations and logic to think through what a thing actually is. And somebody in the room I was talking to about intoxicating substances. You use your discernment, your mental factor of discernment. One of 5 things the Buddha pointed out when he said there are 5 things that make you up. One of them is discrimination. I think a better translation is discernment, your ability to determine the fine differences between things. So you use logic, discernment, and observation to look at, well, what did this negative action do? And that builds up this feeling that we would call regret, which is, again, not guilt, not going, oh, I'm a terrible person, but instead is looking at the action and going, that was a really bad action. I shouldn't do actions like that again, right? Regret and resolve. Anyways, okay, backing up, let's see. What about self-defense? Okay, that'll be the last question for the day, unless an absolutely insane question comes in that I have to answer. Okay, so self-defense, I actually talked about on the podcast with Neil Ripsky, and he talked about it as well, and I was pleased to find out we agree. My main teacher for many years was a highly trained martial artist and a good fighter. He was good. He was a Okinawan martial artist, and his teacher was a champion fighter in Japan and a great Zen master at the same time. And he was basically the same. My teacher. It was a Western gentleman, but trained to a deep level in Okinawan martial Zen, as I call it, and Tibetan Buddhism in the Gelug lineage, both of those. So self-defense is violence for sure, but what you learn to do as a practitioner, yeah, it's probably buffering a bit. So what you learn to do as a practitioner is, if you did have to use violence, you study karma, you study action to understand here's what makes up an action, and you understand how to minimize the negative aspects of the action and maximize whatever might be the positive aspects of the action. So that if you did, out of a moral responsibility, have to use violence at some point, that the type of karma you're accumulating is either not damaging your practice, or maybe even ideally, even though it has negative aspects, is still driving you further down the path, right? And there are famous examples of this in the Buddhist canon. There's a Jataka, there's a past life story of the Buddha. There's a past life story of the Buddha where he, uh, how do I how do I say this? So he was a boat captain, and there was a murderer that came on board the boat, and the Buddha, as a bodhisattva in his past life, came to be aware that, oh, this person's going to kill all these people on the boat. And based on the circumstances, the only option was to either kill this person, this murderer and thief, or to allow this murderer and thief to kill everyone on the boat. And so the Buddha made the decision that, out of compassion for both the murderer and the people on the boat, the only morally correct thing to do would be to kill this person. So it's interesting, at least in one version of this that I heard, although I haven't been able to track it down, but at least in one version of this that I heard, Due to this, the Buddha took rebirth for like a fraction of a second in a hell realm and then immediately went to the upper realms again. So the karmically speaking, the action was negative, but it was like extremely slight in terms of it was negativity, especially considering he killed a person. And the reason that it was only so slight was, and according to some, again, sort of commentary I've heard, still propelled him further down the path of training, is that even though the action overall was negative, it was motivated by Mahakaruna. It was motivated by compassion. It was motivated by one of the most powerful positive mental factors in the entire Buddhist canon, because he didn't want that murderer to suffer in a hell realms for eons and eons and eons by killing whatever it was 100 people on a boat. He would have gone and stealing all their stuff. He would have gone to hell realms for an unbelievable period of time. And likewise, all these people on the boat would have suffered from getting killed. So he took the negative karma onto himself, basically, of, well, yes, I'm going to have to kill this person and accept the negative action, because how could I stand by and let this person go to hell realm for eons and let these people end up wherever they're going to end up in terms of rebirth by getting killed by this person on top of the suffering they're going to experience of being killed? How could I stand by and let that happen? So there are sort of moral teachings in the Mahayana canon where they talk about basically you have to do bad things sometimes, but if you understand the components that make up an action, you can aim all of those components to be, or sort of arrange all those components to be either as minimally negative as possible or mixed so that they have positive elements and of course the negative element that would be involved in doing violence, right? Now, having said that, I'll also say this. One of my main teachers, who was a highly skilled fighter, he said this to me on one occasion. He said, most people who think they're harmless, if they encountered a situation where they might have to use violence to defend themselves or defend someone they cared about, for example, wouldn't walk away because they have a feeling of ahimsa. They don't walk away because they have a feeling that I will not harm others. That's not the mental factor that pulls them out of the situation to do something else. What pulls them out of the situation is I don't want to get hurt myself. Right? Just fear. So if you run away when you could have helped by doing something uncomfortable to someone else, if you walk away because you're scared and you don't want to be hurt yourself, that type of mind isn't actually a virtue in Buddhism. So that type of mind of running away from helping other people because you're scared you might get hurt isn't a virtuous thing. You understand? Like, I mean, especially because if you really want to train in stuff like this hardcore, listen, go read the biographies of some of these great saints. Like, not that they have to do a bunch of negative things, but like training hard hurts. It's a lot of work. You go through a lot of pain sometimes. I'll get a little bit personal and say, like there are certain types of practices, for example, you do that cause a huge amount of physical pain. Like for half of the day, you'll feel pain. But you do these practices anyway because they lead to certain kinds of results that are incredibly beneficial, mainly for others. I was talking to somebody about this with regards to the Lam Rim, for example, and those of you who don't know what that is, stages of the path, it's basically one way of arranging all the Buddha's teachings in a sort of a teachable order. So you start with the easiest bit and the most important bit, and then you work your way through. But the first sets of motivation of contemplations you develop to change your attitude are basically about making yourself absolutely terrified. That's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable to be scared about stuff. It's really uncomfortable to be scared that you might not succeed at your practice. That's not a nice thing. That's not relaxing. But if part of you isn't doesn't think the stakes are real, then you won't be motivated to do what you need to do. You understand? Think about it like when you're going to a job interview. If you go to the job interview and you don't think this is important at all, you don't dress right, you don't brush your teeth, you don't brush your hair, you don't research the company, you don't research the people that are going to be on the panel for the interview, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you get lucky and get the job anyway. But if you don't think the consequences of not being prepared, if you don't think that's important, then you're not driven to do anything to step up to the opportunity that's in front of you. And part of thinking that the stakes of the situation are real, that the basically that it's important that you do it, right? And that the consequences of not doing it are absolutely, pardon my French for those of you who this might be your first stream, but the consequences of not doing this are absolutely fucking horrific. Beyond imaginingly beyond imagining fucking horrific according to the canon. You cannot imagine how bad it is. It doesn't go on forever, but it goes on so long, according to one of the great texts, you might as well think it goes on forever. If you don't succeed at this, and at a minimum of putting the causes in place to be able to continue doing it next time, the consequences are absolutely beyond imagining horrible. And so what do you do at the earliest part of the path? You generate extreme anxiety about the situation, and that's not comfortable. It will make you extremely uncomfortable. And that discomfort makes you do stuff that accomplishes the path. And through accomplishing the path, you become comfortable. You see it? So there's just a huge amount of this stuff that really isn't about comfort. And then, so to go back to the self defense thing, if you're running away because you're just scared, and you're running away when you should have helped somebody because that person's now going to be injured or hurt or whatever, and you could have done something potentially not even that bad so that that wouldn't happen. That's just cowardice. That's just fear. That's not being a harmless person. You shouldn't be delusional about what's going on and go, "Oh yeah, I'm just a harmless person, so I let that other person get hurt." Okay. No, you were just scared and you ran away. So ahimsa, according to my great teacher, who was a great karateka, a great martial arts Zen master, in addition to a great tantrika, said to be truly harmless, you need to be capable of doing violence. You need to be capable of harm, and then decide to not harm. And actually, being capable of doing great harm allows you to decide, if you have enough skill, here's how much I need to apply in the situation. Because if you have no skill, you may have to do a lot of damage to that person to stop them from doing something quite harmful. If you have a lot of skill, maybe you only need this much to put them on the ground and lay them down, and then they're just laying there and you're on top of them, or you have them pinned down or whatever. You didn't really do much to them, but now, the cops are going to come and it's done. So if you have great skill in violence, well, now you can be harmless even while doing something that's uncomfortable to someone else, right? So you can defend somebody who might be getting robbed, or again, I'm not telling you guys, if somebody has a gun or if somebody has a knife or whatever, just give them your wallet. Don't be an idiot, okay? But um, if there's a circumstance where it would make sense for you to use certain skills that you have, and if you don't have any skills, then again, don't be an idiot. But if you had certain skills that where you could end a situation quite quickly with minimal harm to one person to help a lot of other people not be harmed in a much greater way, you know, the key point is actually just don't do it out of harmful intention. Don't go, I hate that person who's doing this stuff and I'm going to destroy them, right? well, that's creating huge amounts of negative karma. But if you go, I have to do something, or this one's going to get negative karma, and these people are going to be hurt right now. Well, yeah, you're going to still have a mixed karma from harming that person, but you've also generated metta or or karuna in the midst of that action, which changes the quality of it pretty significantly. So this is the advice of my great teacher on this issue for those of you who are interested. And I think it's a bit appropriate, since like Neil Ripsky, who I'm doing the Lohan course with, which I have to plug every hour on the hour. So here's the link to that course. So Neil Ripsky, who I'm doing this course with, is an extremely capable martial artist. He's won challenge matches in Asia. He worked as a bouncer. He's trained military guys. He's trained police. So like he knows how to do real violence. And he basically said the same thing, Like if you want to be harmless, you need to be capable of doing harm. And so in the Lohan system, which is a Buddhist martial art, like a full-on Buddhist martial art, the name of the art is 18 arhats, 18 guys who have attained nirvana is the name of the art. And they're using their palm. They're not using their fist. It's not Chuan. It's 18 Lohan palm. So it's a training system in which you will absolutely learn how to take somebody apart. But having gained that skill, you're then going to learn how to not use that skill. You use the absolute minimum amount and you gain skills to be able to, for example, as he used on the podcast is a great example. He said the highest level skill in the art is a type of jinn. A jinn is a really subtle, really refined type of physical force that you need huge amounts of coordination to do. But he said, his teacher could do this jinn really easily, and basically because of the way that it comes out of your body, it sort of crushes the other person and they get stuck on the ground. And again, it's not magic. I have teachers that can do stuff like this. In Tai Chi, there's a force like this called Anjin. And you can get a little taste of it. It's not anywhere near this like a competent person, but you can get a little taste of it if you go like this, right? So if you press down on your hand like this and keep the pressure really high and then angle it down like this until it's pointing downward, you can actually feel that the same load sort of power that you would have to hold something up, which is all the strength in your legs, all the strength in your spine, all the strength in your upper body. If you learn how to use that system that would normally lift something by pointing that system downward, you can, it sounds strange, but you can lift something by pushing it down. Again, super weird biomechanics, but it actually makes sense when you feel it and you know how to do it. So you can basically touch somebody like this and it looks like your hand is like this and you have no leverage, but actually you've leveraged the entire system you would use to lift someone off the ground like this and you're pushing them down. So you go, hey buddy, calm down, bang, and they're on the ground, right? So through the internal arts, you gain skills that give you greater and greater capacity to deal with a situation that might be quite bad without having to harm someone else or to only harm them the minimum amount. Yeah. So, this is sort of where Buddhism and martial arts collide is if you have great skill, you can stop bad things from happening with the minimum amount of harm. If you have little skill, then you either have to run away, which is what I recommend. Okay. Or you have to do great harm because you don't have the ability to gauge how much harm is appropriate. You just have to do as much as you can and hope for the best. Because if you miss, then there's going to be even more violence. It's going to be even worse, potentially, right? So this is why you train in stuff that makes you, as Jay said, makes you a bit dangerous, right? It's it only makes you dangerous to you're welcome. It only makes you dangerous in the sense that if you absolutely had to do something, you know what to do. Because what if somebody was going to kill you or kill your mother or kill your little sister and you had no skills? You had nothing. You had no skills at your disposal to do anything, you know? My goodness. I mean, people really do spend their whole lives thinking about situations like that where they go, I hesitated and now I have to live with what happened forever. Or I didn't hesitate, but I didn't know what to do. So what I did wasn't enough. The Buddha was another level. So if you really want to see, like, if you want to see the Buddha's level of this, read the Angulimala Sutta. Angulimala was this incredible martial artist. And Angulimala's teacher was convinced by other students, because Angulimala was the best student in the school. Angulimala's teacher for martial arts was convinced that Angulimala wanted to kill him and take over his school because he was so good. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Oates. And so his teacher said, and Angulimala was, by the way, a great harmless being. He was the the gentle teddy bear, like the tamed tiger, the completely tamed tiger, where he was the greatest student in the school. He could literally, according to the text, he could run down a horse. He was faster than a horse at a gallop. So he was like one of these rare 0.01% Olympic athlete level martial arts guys, like once in a generation guys. And so his teacher, after some prodding from the other students, was convinced that this guy actually has the desire to kill me and take over my school. And so he tells his student, the impressionable young Angulimala, who is this harmless teddy bear of a harmless teddy bear, this tame tiger. He says, Angulimala, I know you want the final skill of my teaching, the final skill of my school. And he says, yes, yes, of course. I want to learn the final pieces of the art. And he says, okay, then you have to promise to do whatever I tell you. Before I tell you what's required to gain this final skill, you have to promise to do whatever I tell you. And he says, of course. You're my teacher. I trust you. And he says, okay, the final skill is the ability to be able to resurrect people from the dead. Incredible. It's basically the control over life and death. He says, but to gain this skill, you have to kill 1,000 people. Imagine how heartbroken he must have been at that moment, right? And so Angulimala, a once in a generation, once, 1 in 10 million, 1 in a million, whatever, unbelievable athlete, martial artist, skilled with weapons, can run as fast as a horse, can outwork everyone with like freak genetics for doing martial arts stuff, is told by his teacher that to complete your training with me, you need to go kill 1,000 people. And then I'll be able to teach you this final piece of the art where you can resurrect people from the dead, by the way, which means that you can bring all these people you killed back to life. All of this is a lie, of course, but Angulimala doesn't know that. And so he's between a rock and a hard place, and he goes out. And at first, as conflicted as he is, he starts killing bandits and thieves and whatever. He's sort of like I don't know what you would call him, but he's sort of vigilante justice kind of guy. He goes out, but then he runs out of thieves and brigands and other bad people, and he gets kind of used to killing at that point because I don't know where he's at in his numbers, but then he decides, okay, well, I'm just going to start killing other people because I'll be able to bring them back to life anyway. And the texts are quite incredible. Like the way that it captures, listen to this. They said he turned villages into non-villages. He went in and he would just kill everyone. And there were certain places on the countryside where he would wander around, and because he could run down a running horse, You couldn't even ride your horse through there and not be killed by this guy. And so eventually the king sends an army, a literal army, to try to stop him. This one guy, because he had killed so many hundreds of people, and his subjects were complaining in the area that there's this guy killing everyone. And um, Angulimala's mother hears that her dear son, her only son, is is going to have an army sent after him, is going to be killed. So she sets out on foot to the area where Angulimala is known to be. And at the same time, the Buddha reaches out with his clairvoyant perception, and he sees that Angulimala is very soon going to see his mother walking down the road, and he's going to kill his own mother. And if you know anything about Buddhist ethics, you can't, I mean, according to the tantras, there's some stuff you can do, but basically, according to everything except for the tantras, if you don't have those techniques, then you go straight to a lower realm if you kill your mother or your father. So the Buddha sets out and beats or arrives roughly at the same time, actually, as Angulimala's mother on this road where Angulimala is hiding. And Angulimala sees the old woman and he realizes it's his mother, and he's sort of on his way to go kill her. And then he looks and he sees that there's a monk, a shramana, actually, a renunciate, who's a little further up the road. And he goes, "Oh, well, since this shramana is here, since this renunciate's here, I'm not going to kill my mother. I'm going to go kill that guy." And so he starts running, again, think about this guy who can run down a horse, running as fast as he can to go kill this monk, because this is kill number 1000 for him. And he was called Angulimala, mala meaning necklace, anguli meaning finger, because he would take a finger from everyone he killed and he made a huge necklace with fingers on it from the people he had killed. So imagine this dude, ripped, strong, weapons, 1,000 fingers and a giant garland around his neck, charging down the road at full speed, a man who can run down a horse, charging at the Buddha. And the Buddha is walking away from him, ahead of him, and running as fast as he can. And he can't catch up to the Buddha, even though the Buddha is just walking at a leisurely pace down the road. Running, 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 running. Can't catch up for some reason. And finally he goes, "Shramana, stop." And the Buddha calls back and he says, "I have stopped. It's you who's still going." And he says, "Don't speak nonsense. You know, you're still going. You're definitely still going." And he says, "No, no. I've achieved cessation. I've achieved stopping. I've achieved nirvana, right? And it's you who's still going." And all of a sudden, these words from the Buddha, and obviously seeing this miracle of the Buddha being able to walk at a leisurely pace and yet still be as far, like, he can't catch up despite running, right? So the Buddha is walking like this, he's running as fast as he can, and they're staying like this, and he can't catch up. And seeing this miracle and hearing these words from the Buddha or something like this, because you know I'm making it slightly more modern and using my own words, but through this, Angulimala drops his weapons, falls to his knees, asks to be a student of the Buddha, and then becomes one of his monks. And I believe in a single life, within one lifetime, he attains nirvana, which is pretty incredible considering he killed 999 people. Right. So compared to us, he was starting at a bit of a disadvantage. If he can do it, we can definitely do it. But to wind the clock back a little bit now. So in terms of great skill, right? If you were an unbelievable, as Jay said, trying to find an omniscient being, right? If you're, at least according to the Buddhist canon, traditional way of talking about the Buddha. For those of you who aren't religious, just take it on the chin for a moment. If you're trying to fight a being who can literally appear in multiple places, walk on water, fly through the air, move at unbelievable speeds, disappear into the earth and come back up in another place, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's the odds are stacked against you. if you happen to have those skills, which I don't have, if you happen to have those skills and you saw someone's purse getting stolen in front of you, maybe somehow they just don't end up stealing the purse. Maybe somehow it just doesn't work out in the way that they were expecting. And that person's purse doesn't get stolen and no one gets negative karma and no one gets hurt, right? Okay, yes. You all have a wonderful day. I'm going to sign off now. Um, I think since we've come this far talking about martial stuff, once again, my final commercial for the day will be once again for the Lohan course. So, for those of you who didn't hear the opening, listen, check this out. Wait, you guys, wait. So there's a sorry. Wait, you guys, wait. So there's a Neil and I had a 4-hour meeting last night after class, and we talked through the entire Lohan system and his much of his martial arts resume and a huge amount of the qigong that he knows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we spent 4 hours arranging everything from Jing level, from the point of view of physicality in the body, all the way up to the edge of working with the vital energies, chi, etc. And then we arranged all of the chi information that he knows in a logical order of training based upon need. You could do it in a number of different orders, but sort of like, well, okay, if you're going to learn how to send jins through the meridians, then maybe you learn how to send it through individual meridians. Then you learn how to send it through all the meridians because he has two different systems of qigong that do them differently. And I said, well, why not teach the individual meridians, then teach all the meridians together because that will be much more effective afterwards. He goes, yeah, I agree, right? So we're we have arranged all this material, and then to my great surprise and delight, because I didn't know exactly the way that his Thai forest stuff had been set up, for example, it just so happened that when we got to the meditation portion, because Lohan involves physical martial art, including self-defense, and then energetic stuff, vital energies, and so forth, and then working with your mind, which has subtle energies and is your mind. So when we got to the mind portion, I'm putting some of my material in there and I'm asking him, well, what's going on with Thai forest and how do you do it and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that the Thai forest version is almost in exactly the same order that I teach my 5 foundations. And I went, wow, that's incredible. And so we just sort of slotted those in where for example, I teach meditation on consciousness by focusing on mental content, and then you start to see gaps in mental content, and then you're left with consciousness. The Thai forest tradition that he trained in, you train with a mantra, and then you make the mantra slower and draw it out until there are gaps between the mantra, and then you end up with consciousness. So it's the same, except you use the mantra as a tool, right, to control what's on the surface of the mind, and you're developing some concentration while you're trying to create these gaps to be able to meditate on consciousness eventually. And I went, brilliant. We'll teach them my method and we'll teach them the Budo method from the Thai forest tradition. And you can have both of these tools to work with when you're trying to access consciousness. We'll combine the two, right? Fantastic. And then we got into the final stages of the system, which are basically, for those of you who are interested, someone was asking about Tantra, Tumo, Neidan, this kind of thing at the beginning of the stream. So the Shaolin system we were talking about this system where you work with the lower, your lower part of your body, you build stuff up, it triggers subtle states of mind. So there is a Buddhist and Taoist version of this that comes through, the Buddhists and Taoists share this in common through the Shaolin Temple. So there's a Buddhist version of this basically that comes through Shaolin Temple that's part of this lineage. So at the end of this process where you have made the body perfect, you've made the energy system perfect, you've developed yourself as a martial artist in case bad stuff happens, you then train your mind so that your mind is incredible and like unbelievably capable, and you know what all the components are making up your being. You can use all those tools and components now to do rumination meditation, and we've input some of his Thai forest rumination meditations in there along with my technique, right? And then you do nadon and you work with the subtlest aspects of your being to trigger the subtlest minds that exist, right? So you have this full spectrum basically going from working with the most obvious part of yourself, your body, to working with the most subtle aspect of yourself, the subtlest mind. And it goes through the whole system. You know, it makes me want to cry thinking that there's like, I don't know how many people that know this system, and it could go out of existence if he got hit by a bus. You know what I mean? Because I don't know that anyone's ever trained the whole system with him. I don't think they have. Maybe like one, I don't know if they have actually trained the whole system with him. And then as a final note on this, because the Nadon system is shared in common basically with the Taoists and the Buddhists in China, and because this particular lineage went through Tibet on its way back to China after the destruction of the southern Shaolin Temple in the 1700s, it actually has some elements in common with the Tibetan tantric practices related to these same things that we've been talking about. And yeah, so we were talking about, well, what aspects could we enrich this part of the curriculum with from all of the other Taoist stuff that makes this work really well at this stage of the game, and at least the stuff that doesn't require empowerment and so forth from the Tibetan Tantra side. You see what I mean? So by the time we get to that material, we will have shaped all of that material to include the best possible tools to make all of the things work that that system is supposed to do. In addition to the Shaolin ones, we're going to add the other aspects that make it work as best as possible, because there are different ways to do it, and they can all be quite helpful. You know, so Shaolin Lohan Palm probably, I'm imagining, will end up being like a 6 or an 8 year program, and it will be one video a week plus group classes plus supplementary materials. We've even talked about, for people who want to go like really hardcore, we're going to hire at some point. We think we're going to hire someone that does ancient Chinese, and as an elective towards the end, after the meditation portion, we're going to have a potentially, again, this is a few years from now, but potentially we're going to add on like a 12-week course that where you learn the basics of ancient Chinese so that you could do a little bit of work in understanding some of the primary texts if you wanted to. You could get started on that at least, which would be kind of cool. And same thing, one of his kung fu brothers does traditional Chinese medicine, and so we were thinking we might have him come in and create an elective attached to the course at one of the later stages, or maybe around the qigong time, you know, um, where people who wanted to could do a 12 or a 24-week supplemental course within the course. It's within the main course. You could do a supplemental aspect, where you do a deep dive on traditional Chinese medicine, for example, because he has connections all over the world with people that are like unbelievable scholars and practitioners of all sorts of stuff, as do I. So we're going to do our best to sort of make this curriculum super rich with options and different ways to go as you get further down the pipeline. And and then of course, whatever you're combining this with in terms of, if you have another main lineage of Taoist practice, Hindu practice, you know, I think even Abrahamic practices that are of the mystical variety, I suppose. Basically, all of this would support you in doing any of those systems. But if you're Buddhist and you wanted a Buddhist one that takes you through all of this stuff, like working with the body, working with the energy system, working with the subtle components that make up your being, it's all going to be in there. So super excited. It again, Neil isn't like an encyclopedia of internal Chinese arts, and he's going to pour the best of Tai Chi, Bagua, Xingyi, Yichuan, Ziquan, and all of these other arts that he knows. He's going to pour all of that into the curriculum so that the best parts of the internal arts of every variety he knows, you will be able to express through your Lohan. So if you have an interest in Chinese arts and you wanted to learn all of the little mechanics that make them work, he's going to build all of the mechanics for those arts into his into the training for his Lohan. Because you can use Lohan to express any of the subtler aspects of the internal arts. And he knows them. He holds, I think, like 6 different lineages, like holds the actual lineage for 6 different internal Chinese arts, like 5 or 6 of them. I mean, he's just, again, he's a legend, and he's so humble that it literally took me 300 hours to figure out who he is. This is the other thing I talked to him about. I said, Neil, if it takes 300 hours for someone extremely determined and capable of researching stuff like myself to figure out who you are, then no one will ever know who you are. Is that how you want the story to end? And he's like, no, man. Anyway, so for those of you who are interested, please do check out Lohan Palm. And through the Discord, there's discount codes. If you're amongst the first 50 people to sign up for either the yearly course or for the monthly subscription, you can sign up for a year or you can sign up by the month. You get 3 months half off because we're going to be talking to you a lot in the Facebook group and working stuff out and making sure things are working. And we just want to reward people that are coming in early. And if there are any kinks or whatever, we want to make sure that we're still delivering you like unbelievable value during that first 3 month period, if you know what I mean. But already, I think it's turning out really exceptional, really great. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming, and hope to talk to you again. Oh, actually, why don't I just put it here? So first 50 is the monthly code. If you put this in at checkout, and then first 50 year. So it's just first come, first serve. Whoever signs up for the first year using this code or first monthly subscription using this code, first 50 in either category will get 3 months off. Yeah. Or 3 months half off, rather. Okay. Well, my friends, we really have arrived at the end, I think. Thank you so much for coming. Hope to see you again soon. Try not to die before I do. Cheers. You're quite welcome. Hope to see you soon. User 18M1V. It's not very doesn't roll off the tongue.